What's up, Wild Mamas and friends? Welcome back to Wild Mama TV. I'm Tiff, and I'm so stoked to share part two in my series around how I joined a cult at 16, had an arranged marriage by 20 years old, and then became a mother, and all of the aftermath after that. So if you're just joining me for the first time in this video, I highly recommend that you watch part one and then come back and watch part two, because this one, I mean, it'll be interesting, but it won't make as much sense if you don't watch part one. But hey, do you. And I just thank you for watching and being here and sharing in this moment in time with me. So anyways, for the rest of y'all, if you want to hear a little bit more about my story around joining a cult, and specifically around my journey of becoming a mother, and what that then led to, and my realization around spiritual rape, and that I had been spiritually raped, then definitely keep on watching. All right, y'all, let's get started. So where I left you off in part one was that I had an arranged marriage, and that I was 20 years old when that happened. And the people that chose my marriage, or the person I would marry at 20 years old, were not my parents, but were the leaders in this church that I had been a part of. They arranged my marriage, and I was only 20 years old, and I was a virgin. So one thing that they teach you about getting married. Excuse me. They teach you about getting married, and that is the greatest demonstration, or one of the greatest demonstrations of your faith in God. Not just getting married, but having an arranged marriage, having someone else choose your marriage, having a servant of God choose the person that you're going to marry, and then that you have a very short engagement. So my engagement was 5 weeks, like I told you, and so they tell you to do that. But once you get there and you're in the marriage, there's not a whole lot of insight and support, specifically around sex and babies. And so I was 20, a virgin, and had no fucking clue what to do about sex and birth control. So I remember having Bible study with a different shepherdess or Bible study teacher. By this time, I remember having Bible study with her, and all she told me was sex is good, which I was like, okay. But anytime I would ask anyone really about birth control, or is it sinful to be on birth control? Is it okay to be on birth control? Is God gonna be displeased if I'm on birth control? Because mind you, I'm brainwashed. I do whatever they tell me to do, and I didn't know what to do in this circumstance. So I was asking everybody, asking my Bible study teacher, what to do about birth control. But no one said anything. And it was kind of this like, almost rooted in this like belief or like principle that they kind of taught, which is like, just have faith in God. And if you have faith in God, then whatever's supposed to happen is gonna happen. And whatever is not supposed to happen won't happen. So basically, Tiff, if you just have faith in God, if you're meant to have a baby, you'll have a baby and you'll get pregnant. If you're not meant to have a baby, then you won't. And that was kind of the way that they saw things, and the way that they kind of approached life and taught me. So I was really confused, and I was on birth control. I did initially get on birth control, after getting married. But I kind of struggled with it and was like, not sure if I was being good and on God's good side, or if I was like being bad and evil and sinful by taking birth control. So because I was kind of half in, half out, I did end up getting pregnant when I was about a year and a half into my marriage. Before I get into all of that, I do want to share that right after I got married, I was happy to be, in that setting where my brain was brainwashed and conditioned. I was happy to be married to this person. But I was increasingly becoming very confused and dissatisfied and depressed, especially after getting married, because in that church, when you get married and the way that they kind of make you feel like it's like one of the greatest demonstrations of your faith in God, getting married and then still not really feeling any closer to God, really kind of started to give me pause. And y'all, I'm telling you, I was in this church, like I was totally in. I was teaching Bible study every week, multiple times a week, to people my age in college, because I went to one of the universities that had a Bible study place near the college. And so I was doing just like everybody else. Can you imagine me walking on campus asking, hey, would you like to do one-on-one Bible study with me? And then wait for their response. Yes, that was me. And it was the way that you convert people. It was the way that you bring them in. It was the way that you grow the church and spread the good news. So I was doing all of that. And I was a part of the church band. So I was at rehearsals all the time. I was at Bible study all the time. I was studying with my own Bible study teacher, teaching the Bible, and just doing all the things. And I even was studying nursing because they said I should be a nurse. And I believed them and I did what they said, and so I became a nurse, even though I'm fucking bad at science and I should never be a nurse. And so I was like doing all of the right things. I was doing everything that they told me to do, but I was not happy. And I felt so disconnected from the source. I felt so disconnected from God, which was why I came, right? Like I was lost, confused, looking for love. They promised that I would know Jesus and God and be forgiven and, all would be well, but I was not well. But I was so deep in that questioning the church or anything about it just was not, it wasn't a thing. And anyone who ever did question the church or think about leaving the church or did leave the church, they're a sinner. It's them. They're wrong. They're evil. Like the devil has gotten to them. Yada yada yada. So I'm so young. I'm probably like 21 at this point, and feeling sad and depressed or not close to God. In that context and in that framing, it wasn't God's fault. It wasn't their fault. It was my fault. It's because I was a sinner. I was doing something wrong. Something was evil inside of me, keeping me disconnected from God. So I had a moment kind of after getting married, where I just got really depressed. And I found myself for like a whole summer in my garden unit apartment, like binge watching television. I didn't even have cable. I was binge watching television, and eating sour cream and onion chips and eating chocolate donuts and just really sad, just like really, really sad. And it was so hard because I felt like I had been doing everything right, and yet I didn't feel good. So that was really hard to navigate, especially because there was no accountability in that church, and it was no one's fault. If anything's wrong, it's your fault. If everything is right, it's us and God, and Jesus. So Yeah, I just really struggled. And I was living in a like really dark little apartment, garden unit apartment. And so that whole summer, I really asked a lot of deep questions, but was also just fucking confused, and so brainwashed, so like wrapped in, so in the bubble, that I just really I didn't know what to do. And what was difficult also is that I never, ever, ever wanted to go in debt because I knew I had saw my mom go into debt, but because I got married and he made more money than my mom, who was currently on disability, because like I said in the last video, she was sick, she was terminally ill. So my husband made more money than my mom, and so when I was in college, I was no longer able to have the same financial aid that I was able to have with my mom, and so I ended up taking on all these loans. And I feel like just like that, and my mom progressively getting worse and sick, and then my sister, like I was helping take care of my sister who had traumatic brain injury, and taking care of her. I felt like I had no purpose in my life. I was just taking care of everybody else, doing what everyone else was telling me to do. So just like, I think I was just beat down, because life had already been hard, and then I tried to do something to fix it, and it seemed to be making it worse, but I couldn't tell anybody that it was making it worse. So there was like a little high and honeymoon after getting married, but it didn't last long. And so after feeling this depression, whatever, and my like going back and forth about birth control, I end up getting pregnant. And I'm like a junior, like a sophomore or junior in college. I got braces on my teeth, and now I am pregnant, and I'm going to have this big ass belly walking around campus, looking like I'm 15, like seriously looking like I'm 15. Yet I'm married and not 15. So yeah, so I ended up getting pregnant with my first child. And I had always been scared to get pregnant, and scared to have a baby because my sister got pregnant so young, and I just didn't want to be a teen mom. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want a kid so young, but I still felt so young. I was 21, and I still felt so young, and it felt so uncomfortable and weird walking around this college campus. I felt not myself, right? Like I felt like this was when kind of maybe the disorientation or disintegration with myself was really starting to happen. Like I didn't feel like it was me anymore. But this wasn't a conscious shift. This wasn't a conscious thing that was like happening in my brain. It was just happening. And so got pregnant, had my little baby girl, and I tell you that after having my daughter, like I was already starting to like kind of ask questions, right? Like I told y'all, like I, was not feeling good, but was hesitant to question things, but questioned a little bit, just more from like a curiosity, like why does this happen? But after my daughter was born, and I particularly had a leaning towards attachment parenting, and wanted to be close to my daughter, wanted to have her always with me, wanted to wear a wrap, and just take care of her. When the church, especially leaders in the church, started to respond to me in a particular way, specifically around like bringing her to conferences, like they didn't want me to bring my little baby who like was breastfeeding to the conference, and that if I was going to sing on stage, I couldn't have her like on my back in my rap. And I remember like the leader of the church came to my house, y'all, like came to my house and just laid down the law and was so absolutely disrespectful to me, as if I had not just fucking like given all of these years to this church. He didn't give a damn. He came to tell me that I don't give a shit if you're a mom. He didn't use those words exactly, but this is basically what he said. I don't give a shit that you're a mom, and I don't give a shit how much you've given to this church. You are not bringing your baby to this conference, and that's that. So either you don't come to the conference, or you come, but not with your baby. So that was kind of when Tiff reawokened. So when when my baby was born, something happened in me that I started to wake up. It wasn't like totally immediate, but I started to wake up. And I was like, you know what? If this shit goes down just with me, what is gonna happen to my daughter if she grows up in this environment, right? So I started to think outside of myself. I started to think above me and think about this child, in a way that like made me make decisions that I wouldn't even make for myself, but I would make for her. And so she truly was a blessing in my life, even though it came to be in such a crazy traumatic way. Having her really shifted things for me, and got the fire in my Aries nature burning again, and burning in the right way. And so I started asking questions and I started pushing harder, which is my nature, right? Like, I'm not afraid of conflict, but I do everything in love. Like I do it all in love. But at that time, I guess I wasn't like that much with the love part. I was more on like the fierce Aries that doesn't give a damn about what you have to say. You need to answer my question, and why things are the way they are. So anyways, I was starting to wake up after my daughter was born, and especially after that leader who apparently was supposed to be like loving and supportive, who actually became my Bible teacher, right? Like I had like a million Bible teachers there, because I just kept like, it just kept not working out, and I kept having conflict and then needing changes and like, so anyways, the person that came to my house and talked to me in this way was actually my new shepherd, my new Bible teacher, who I thought I was building a trustworthy relationship with, but I guess I was not. And so after that, I started really asking questions and I started pushing a lot harder, and I ended up taking this class in my fourth year. Yeah, it was like around my fourth or fifth year. I think it was my fourth year in college. I was taking, or no. Okay, so, sorry, it's been a while, y'all. You gotta bear with me because I haven't told this story in this amount of detail in so long. Anyways, so I, in between, like sort of the waking up, it was kind of like a process of 2 years of like starting to wake up. So right after I got married, had my daughter, etc., I started to really push and shift. And so I ended up in my fourth year changing my major to sociology, because in the last video I told you, or in this video, one of the videos, I told you that that I had studied nursing, which doesn't make sense at all. I think it was this video. I had started studying nursing, and then but I'm terrible at that, and I should never be a nurse. I should never study science, and I was failing, and it was terrible. It just didn't feel good at all. So in my fourth year in college, I decided to change my major to sociology, after taking a sociological statistics class. And so, yeah, I changed my major. And so then fast forward a little bit more time, and me pushing more and asking more questions, I ended up in this class called Leadership for Change, with someone who ended up becoming my mentor, who looked like me, kind of acted like me, and she was teaching this class on Leadership for Change, which was basically a class dedicated to who are you, asking these questions of what do you want for your life, thinking about your ideal day, all of those good things. And so, oh yeah, okay, so I was around 23 by this point, and I was coming into my like 6th year in college, senior year, because it took me 6 years to graduate since I changed my major in my 4th year. And so I was in this class, I was digging deep, I was asking all these questions, I was fucking confused. I had all these dreams and things that I wanted, but my current life did not look anything like what I was saying I wanted. Like I wrote my ideal day, and it was nothing like what I was experiencing. And one day I was sitting in that class, like in the front row, because Tiff sits in the front row. I was in the front row of that class, and all of a sudden, this bubble that I had been living in for the last 6 or 7 years bursted. Like, it just blew open. Like, and it was a night class, and it was like, I was just sitting there, and it was just like, holy shit. I'm 23, I'm married, and I have a kid. What the fuck just happened? Like, oh my gosh, Tiff. Like, what did you do? What happened? How am I married? How am I 23? How am I a mom and still in college? Like, wow. Like, it was like I guess you could call it like an awakening moment of when I realized not even the degree to what had happened, but realized that I had like disappeared for a while and now just came back to my body and realized that the life I was living and everything that was happening wasn't me. And yet now I'm married and I have a kid. I have responsibilities. Like, I have obligations to these people who are in my life. And I'm in this church, this crazy ass church, that I feel so confused by, because it doesn't make sense. Things aren't adding up. Everything that they said would add up, it didn't add up for me in my life. And I felt totally defeated, and I felt sad, and I felt even more lost, and so disoriented, right? Like, it's like I went on vacation, I come back, and then the person that's there, or my home, my life, it's not right. It's not me. It's not okay. And yeah, that was a rough moment, and probably one of the darkest. It was just a continuation, because I was already going down, right? Like I told you, I had been depressed after marriage. Then I got pregnant. Then I had my baby. Then I was asking all these questions, so confused. So it was already just like plummeting, right? Like it went like this, and then it was like meow. So this was like the crash and burn at the bottom of the ditch. That was where I was at that moment. And it was dark, and it was confusing, because I was just at this moment, like I was in this class starting to dream again. Like I was in this class starting to imagine again what my life can be. And honestly, that might be why my bubble finally just bursted, because I was dreaming again, and I was imagining, and I wasn't like this robot just doing whatever everybody wanted me to do. And I was starting to think for myself again, slowly, little by little, so much in a way that, like, after, like, combined with becoming a mother and her waking me up, and then this waking me up, it was like I don't know, it was like my soul kind of came back to life after after being like beaten down, right? Like my intuition, my spirit, my soul, myself, my life, like everything started to wake up again. But when I started to wake up, I woke up to something that was like terrible. Like just bad. Even though I loved my husband at the time, I loved my kid, like it just was bad. And so about 4 days later, after waking up and having my whole life and bubble bursted open, the explosion, like probably like 4 days to a week later, I found out that I was pregnant again with my son, who I didn't know was a boy at the time, but I ended up pregnant, and it just made me go down even more, because I had made plans to maybe go study abroad, because I had never studied abroad before, and it was something that kind of came out in my visioning, thinking, and dreaming. And now I can't go because I'm gonna be giving birth to another kid at that time. So it was sad. It was sad. And I really struggled a lot with that. And so I named my son Vision so that I could have vision for my life, and I hoped that he would have vision for his. But all of that ended up kind of culminating to this point of really questioning the church and really questioning whether or not I should be there, what I should do. And I was really grappling and having a difficult time. And so my mom recommended that I take a leave of absence from the church. So I was really hesitant to do it. I was really afraid to do it. When you're brainwashed, even if you're in an abusive situation that's terrible, and not good for you, you still think it's the best thing for you. Like you still think that that's where you should be, and that's totally where I was. And yeah, but I knew I needed something to be different. And so I took my mom's advice, and I, wrote a letter, and, let everybody know that we would be taking a leave of absence for 3 months to just kind of sit with things and think about things. And yeah, and I did that. And during that time, I tell you, and right after we decided to do that, they raised our rent, because we were living in the same building as like other Bible study people. And the woman came up, the same woman actually who asked me to marry Reuben, is the same woman who came up and was like, yo, we're raising your rent. And this was right after I wrote the letter that we would be taking a leave of absence. So, it wasn't a way of like totally saying y'all are out, but it was definitely a way of ostracizing us and making it challenging for us. And so we decided to move and take some space for that 3 months. And I grappled really hard. And literally the only thing that I could come up with after thinking about everything that had happened was that, you know what? Over the last 6-7 years that I've been in this church, this whole experience, I've been spiritually raped. Like, if someone wants to get at the core of your being, they go after your spirit, they go after your soul, they go after that immaculate part of you and what makes us divine in this life. And I was so vulnerable at 16, 17, and primed for them to take advantage, right? Pull me in, get me into all that was this church. And I recognized finally at that time that, damn, like this is spiritual rape. This is like the taking of my essence, because I do not believe that at 16 or 17 that I could give consent to the things that ended up happening. That even at 20 years old getting married, I do not believe that I could have given consent, full consent to marriage, to all of these crazy ass things. Like, I didn't ask for the brainwashing. Like, I didn't ask for the mental manipulation, the spiritual manipulation, the emotional abuse that came with being in this church. I did not ask for that, and I did not give consent to those things. I mean, how do you fucking give consent to that, right? Like, yeah. So I had been spiritually raped, and it was the most fucked up feeling ever in my life. And it took me a long, long time to heal. But after taking that leave of absence, we did decide to leave the church. And I feel like those 6 years were so difficult, but I tell you, the 6 years, 6+ years after that, the 11 that it's now taken me to get to this point, to even be able to share the story in this way, like, it's the aftermath that is the most, I think, even more difficult than dealing with the actual situation. But we did decide to leave, thank goodness. And so much more like unraveled after that. So much, it was a lot more darkness before I came into the light. Although, you know, leaving was definitely a relief, and it was helpful, but it was also very confusing. So I'm gonna end for part 2 today because I went already longer than part 1. But you can see how challenging it was after getting married, the depression that I faced, the absolute confusion, the like, I don't know, like, I guess you could call it manipulation or abuse, or I don't know. Like, it was just all of the things after having a baby, and I don't know, even control on women, like telling me that I can't bring my baby to a conference and all of the above. So it was just crazy. But I'm gonna leave it at that for part 2. Again, if you didn't watch part 1, go watch part 1. And if you want to keep, you know, listening and on this story, stay tuned for part 3, part 4, maybe a bonus after that. So, you know, I welcome you to subscribe to this channel so that you can get the notifications of when I release, you know, new videos. But I just want to say thank you, because this is how I became a mother. My 2 beautiful babies, this is how they were born. But I'm so grateful to them because they really awakened me. My daughter awakened my soul in a new way, and her name is Genesis, by the way, which means the beginning, in the beginning. So I feel like she was so prophetic in her choosing to come into my life at that time. And my son Vision helped me have vision for my life, even in my darkest moments. So I'm so grateful to my children, and I'm so grateful to be a mother, and so grateful that now I can share with all you wild mamas, even though that this is like, even though this crazy experience happened and this is how I became a mother, the fact that I'm now able to share with y'all and create wild mama even out of this, I just think that that's fucking dope. And so I'm in gratitude and I'm in joy, even though it's really crazy to think about all of this again and go back to those places. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being with me. Thank you for sharing space and holding space. And I hope you feel inspired no matter what difficulty you're facing. Like, there's always a way out. So I'm going to keep sharing. Look out for part 3 and part 4 soon. But thank you for being here. Blessings to all you wild mamas and my friends. And let's continue to break the global power structure by living into our fullest potential, radiating our light, and breaking through fear. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a great week, y'all.